I'm starting off with a 4 foot by 2 foot canvas, which is usually larger than I would normally work with, but it's quite large and I thought it was good for this painting. What I've done is I drew on all the different shapes that I need to work on, so very fine edges that have really high precision that I'm going to need in the painting. And then I've taken that with a pencil, and drawn them in, and then erased it very lightly so I can remove all the excess graphite from getting into the paint. So I just need a basic fine line. You can probably see it in the painting. I've mixed up titanium white and ivory black, which actually makes it a little bit of a light blue color. It doesn't really show up yet, but will later on. I'm kind of filling in. The outside edges are actually a bit darker than the rest of it. And as you can kind of see as it gets lower and more towards the center, that grayish blue is actually getting a little bit lighter and lighter. You can kind of see the shape of the roof line coming out, which is why I did all that pencil work, which took about 10 hours of drawing on canvas. So the painting itself would be about 100 hours, I'm guessing. I started filling in the darkest areas of the canvas first. It looks pitch black at this point, but it's actually a mixture of burnt umber and ivory black, which are exact opposites on the color wheel from each other. So it's going to start looking a bit more gray as it lightens up. The reason I do this is because the canvas is so large and white that I needed to kill off all the white areas so I can kind of actually see values along the way. But as you can see, as I start filling in areas around that are lighter or darker than what I've already put in, the color actually changes and the value of those areas change to become a little bit more gray and less black because things next to them aren't stark white as they were before. I'm not changing the actual color or the tone, it's just the things next to it are making it look different than it was before. That's kind of the whole point of this process. The big area on the floor for the floor needs to be filled in as well. And I can kind of see at this point that it's starting to show the actual values I was working with. The blacks don't look black anymore, they look actually mid-tone gray. At this point, I'm just trying to fill in all the areas of the buildings in the back of the courtyard. All mid-tone grayish to the lighter side at this point. It might look like I'm putting in some actual details at this point, and I'm not. I'm just trying to get the basic values in place, make sure everything's kind of right, get some basic shadows, and I'm leaving blank spots for trees later. There's some areas that are overall kind of have a shadow that are going to be covered up partially later on as well. I'm not too worried about making sure everything's hyper accurate, just getting them blocked in place so I can kind of judge what it looks like later on for overall color and shadow. And then I start working on the actual courtyard itself, kind of fills in that area. You can kind of see at this point that I've actually gotten the light in the overall floor, like the near floor is actually not right. It looked kind of dark before, but overall light because everything else around it. But now it's pretty obvious that the sunlight is going across that floor is just wrong. So I'll fix that in a little bit. We get the bushes in. There's a lot of rows of bushes. Again, just getting some basic values into the roof in order to get the overall values in place, but not a lot of detail. And try to put the things in the right place at least. Later on, I'll actually have to make some adjustments because some of these items were put in slightly wrong angles, but that's not the part of the issue at this point. At this point, most everything's filled in. I'm going to start working on these columns because they actually have a lot of different values in order to make the shape look right. Overall, I'm just trying to fill in those overall values, make sure things are put into the right location. And I'm getting some kind of close edges to where I need them to be. It looks like I'm putting a little more detail work in, which is kind of right, but it's not. I'm mostly just trying to get things put into the right place semi-accurately for later on, so it's easier to judge where everything goes, and I can do the details later. Those base of those pillars are kind of a pain because they have a lot of different shapes built into them. It's pretty close in shape to where I'm going to have them later on, but it's just going to require a little more work. So now I'm going back to the overall roof area and trying to fill in all the areas that were wrong because the canvas was so white it was hard to see the value. But it looks like some of these browns are turning more gray. That's just because I had it painted too thinly before. It's still the same mixture of 1 part burnt umber to 1 part ivory black. But just because it's painted more thickly, it looks right. I took a photo of the painting and loaded it into some software. I can draw some lines on it. And these perspective lines kind of help me identify where everything was at the wrong angle. Maybe something's a little too high, a little too low. And that makes it so I can just kind of go back to the actual painting, work on those specific areas, kind of touch them up. The painting's dry for the most part, so I'm able just to put a little more paint on top, move things around. And it's pretty easy to get things lined up this way with a ruler or the edge of the actual paintbrush. At this point, I have about 20 hours into the painting, and I have enough work done that I can actually get the basic shape, the basic tones I need in every area. I can kind of move things around a little bit more as I need them. Probably applying color over top of all this, including some glaze work as well.